All right, welcome back. So I thought, out of all the stories we covered today, I thought I should pull this up. There's something we call the 5 invisible deals running your relationship, and I want to share them with you candidly over the next few minutes. All right, this is going to be very important for you if you are inside a modern time relationship or you're getting into one. When I say you are inside a modern days relationship, it doesn't matter what age you're in. If your wife or your husband, if they are exposed to TikTok, if they're exposed to Instagram, if they're exposed to social media, YouTube, and they're watching all this stuff happening in the streets, then you need to pay attention to. These are the deals you signed up for that you probably haven't paid attention to. And I want to point them out to you respectfully. It's very, very important. The first deal you signed up for is what I call the identity contract. Who am I to you? I promise you, you haven't thought about this way before. Okay, but to give you another layer of understanding to how modern day relationships work. Yes, even if you consider yourself relationship, you fight not the flesh. You're fighting forces from high powerful places that you're not always privy to understand from a pragmatic standpoint. So what do? You have to put proactive measures in place to make sure that the relationships that you care about are protected from some of these issues. So what we're talking about the identity contract. The reality is that your romantic partner, they want recognition, just like the regular people out there. Okay, they want recognition, they want significance. Significance is a basic human need. It's one of the 6, according to Tony Robbins. We have the variety, we have certainty, we have significance. That's 3, right? We have growth, we have contribution, and we have connection. Those are 6 basic human needs, and recognition will fall under the category of significance, maybe admiration, what men would call respect oftentimes. It's all under recognition. People want recognition before responsibility. Never mind if they are the one who is always preaching duty and responsibility. They are all liars. Okay, they just want to be recognized. They want to feel significant in your life. Okay, if you can figure that out even when they're talking, and then you can add 1 plus 1 together, and you probably can serve your partner a little bit better. In other words, there will be nothing better than you in the streets. Okay, many relationships are about validation at least a small level. You want to feel validated by your partner. Why do you get into argument? Because you're trying to say you are right and you need the other person to validate it. Okay, so connection, like I said, is a basic human need, but also validation, again, significance, recognition, right? This represents, unfortunately or fortunately, a big part of their identity because they've chosen to spend life with you. Okay, so of course, if you're always in a position where you're invalidating what your partner has to say, regardless of what gender, you're basically exposing yourself. You're creating a vulnerability where the external forces can invade your relationship and literally destroy it. And so if I tell you that makes up people's identity as part of the contract they signed with you, who am I to you, right? If that identity becomes unclear, emotions become very expensive to manage. Okay, and you don't get to turn off emotions. Let's not be emotional. That's also a lie. The only thing you can do with emotions is learn how to manage it. It's called emotional intelligence. Let's move on to contract number 2 that you signed that you might not have paid attention to, the money contract. What do you gain from me? Okay, so when I say money there, let's take that with a pinch of salt. I'm talking more so value. Okay, I'm talking about more so value. Okay, but let's use money to represent value because we use money in exchange for value, right? Money always changes the tone of love, particularly when there's lack of money or there's struggle with money for a prolonged period of time. Okay, this is why the pastors get to use money to cajole us. Okay, they get to use the preaching of tithe to hold us hostage for decades, potentially centuries. I'm not saying tithing is wrong. I'm talking about how it's been manipulated to use to control. human beings. Okay, financial power silently creates hierarchy. It creates power dynamics that you need to pay attention to. And if I were you, and I tend to be the one who brings in most of the money, you in particular, the one that brings in most of the money, you need to be self-aware around this and learn how to manage how that plays a role in power dynamics in your relationship. Okay, so even though relationships or marriage is supposed to be partnership, quote unquote, it's supposed to be, right? Sometimes it becomes a matter of sponsorship. So even if you're making the least money, sometimes you come with this defensive spirit where is it because you make more money than me, and you're the one leading that dynamic, even though you are making the least money. So again, self-awareness is heavy when it comes to this. So you did sign the money contract, okay, in most relationships, as a matter of fact, but especially romantic relationship. Okay, people use money or that position of they bring the most value, they use it to manipulate, they use it to create an imbalance when it comes to power dynamics, and that obviously causes an issue. How do you balance it? Self-awareness, emotional intelligence, active listening, all those nice things, you know. Let's move on to contract number 3, the loyalty contract. How much disrespect will you tolerate? How much disrespect will you tolerate? Okay. You remember that I played the video of the two gentlemen who was barking at each other earlier on. Then we talked about also the reality TV star who has to now play loyalty to a man who potentially has robbed other people. We don't know if that's what happened. We're just saying when that comes to play and you're already inside of a relationship, things will happen in a relationship that's not always clear. Even sometimes your partner is outrightly they're wrong, and now you have to play the loyalty card. To what extent? Okay, so loyalty, what you need to understand about loyalty, sometimes that can cross line with self-betrayal, right? That can become very confusing when it comes to self-betrayal. You're being loyal to another person, but you're depriving yourself. This is a dance that you have to learn how to dance. Okay, and some people would stay in a relationship with you just to prove a point, not because they care about you. And of course, that becomes a very unhealthy dynamic if you don't find a way to fill those gaps as fast as humanly possible. Again, some people will stay with you not necessarily because they like you, love you, or they find value with you, but they find value in some other point that they're trying to prove. Do you know how to discern that? Do you know how to find out what that is? Okay. And by the way, pride will trap people longer than love will, right? That's why I said number one of the reasons why marriages are collapsing is pride. Okay, the reason why lack of money or problem with money or problem with cheating will go beyond fixing, or somebody would not say, hey, I was wrong, let me fix it, is pride. Okay, because those things have happened in some of the relationships you respect. Okay, so again, back to loyalty, cheating, all this kind of stuff. Oftentimes you feel betrayed by your partner, right? You don't always run to the exit line because of that, but sometimes you will stay longer because you're humble enough to say, hey, let me listen deeper, what else is going on in this situation, right? Because reality is that you still stay anyway. Sometimes you stay because of pride, right? Sometimes you stay to prove a point, right? So why not take that time to really process and make the right moves? Let's move on to contract number 4. Contract number 4, the freedom contract. You have to love in a way that the other person feels free. Okay. Now there's a blurry line between freedom and your moral values. I'm never asking you to compromise on your personal values, your personal moral values. I'm never asking you to do that. The only thing I'm ever asking you to do is listening actively. Listen a little bit more actively, humility. Understand that you have a blind spot. Like even with all your moral values, you have a blind spot. So you don't want to jump into hasty conclusions off of standards or ideologies that you've never really tested. You want to be careful with that. So Every relationship has at least subtle rules, spoken or not. Okay, that's the reality. There's always some kind of contract, but that could be freedom contract. That means you're allowed. So after you align in terms of personal values, but you still want to allow that person, especially if you're a man to a woman, you want to allow them to go and come as free as they want, as long as it doesn't compromise personal values. Okay. Sometimes you're just overthinking. Sometimes just over, sometimes you're choking your relationship to death because you're stuck on ideologies that you yourself have never tested. Okay. I personally don't subscribe to open relationship, whatever that means, polyamorous, all that neo stuff. I don't think the modern man has the capacity to sustain that. I don't think the environment is conducive for an average man when it comes to that. Of course, there's always exception, right? But the reality is that freedom or a sense of freedom is necessary. But always remember that if you feel free within your relationship, appreciate that it means somebody probably sacrificed something. Okay, even if it's as simple as their ideology, sometimes they feel some type of way, but they'll let you be free because they're sacrificing short term, but they understand that long term they get to benefit as well. Okay, but let's be clear that there is no rule free where there's expectations. Okay, the only thing I ask of you, expectations is the second reason why people are breaking apart and they can't sustain long term relationships. Mismanage expectations. The only thing I ask you to do when it comes to expectations is manage them. Okay, give your partner the freedom to express their expectations and manage your own expectations. It doesn't matter what side of the gender you fall on. Just practice what I just said. Give your partner the freedom to express their expectations and manage your own expectations, and then you'll be in a better position than most people trying to do love in the modern times. Okay, and it's very unlikely for you to be replaceable in these streets. Okay, and last but not least, the emotional labor contract. Who suffers quietly? I think I just kind of like subtly spoke to that. Mario, to welcome. Good to see you. I think I just subtly spoke to that. The emotional labor contract. If you're enjoying some level of freedom, please take the time to appreciate. Remember that the first contract is the identity contract, meaning recognition, significance, admiration. Sometimes you can boost that by simply being appreciative. Take the time to express some kind of appreciation for the little bit you can find in what you love the most about your partner, right? So let's go back to number 5, the emotional labor contract. If I have to tell you every labor I go through to manage the emotions in our relationship, if I have to be telling you every time that happens, then it's no longer emotional labor. I'm probably just pouring toxicity on you, right? So just always assume that somebody is going through something internally, or they're managing something internally. It doesn't have to be suffering, right? But the question you're asking is, who is suffering quietly? Okay, one person is usually carrying some type of emotional weight that you consider to be freedom, because they have their own ideologies and you're not perfect. Right? So if you can agree that, hey, I'm not perfect, or then you understand that there's time you've crossed the line of you've done something and they just let it slide. Okay, so there's the emotional labor contract. You signed it. Sometimes you have to suffer in silence just because you're giving somebody grace, short term at least. Okay, short term. We just don't want it to become unprocessed pain, because that will eventually leak into what you might be enjoying. Or if you break up with this relationship and move on to other relationships, it will leak into your future relationships. Okay, so this idea of being strong, if you're being strong for too long, okay, it can make people numb. It makes hope deferred, makes the heart weak, right? It can burst out into explosives later on. It can absolutely destroy people. So again, those are the invisible contracts that you probably haven't paid attention to. Number 1, the identity contract. Number 2, the money contract or the value contract. And number 3, the loyalty contract. Number 4, the freedom contract. All of them are double-edged sword. You need to learn how to dance so you can create a beautiful experience overall. Don't be so rigid, okay? Don't be so like rules. There's rules, but there's also, code. There's this silent rules, unspoken rules. And number 5, we have the emotional labor contract. So what should you do with this? Play your own part. Okay, play your own part. What part of this can you manage very well? Because everybody have strength, they have weaknesses, right? And make sure that you're playing to your strength the most. And when it comes to weakness, hopefully, you attract somebody that can give you enough grace so you can slide through some of your weaknesses. But we all have strength and weaknesses. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications so you're notified whenever we go live. Hopefully you're enlightened, educated. We'll see you on the next one. Peace. This is Ola, Man of Prestige, your favorite relationship and marriage coach. If you enjoyed this, smash that like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Be a part of the Prestige family. My wife Lola and I have written 2 powerful books, Get My Marriage Back and Number 1 Red Flag. Yours free at manofprestige.com. For personal coaching, send me a WhatsApp request for consultation to +1 732 305 8577. Stay tuned for more. Your journey to love and prestige starts here.